Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I figured today one thing we could do is maybe dive into Destiny Trials Report and just kind of get our finger on the pulse and see what's going on in Trials these days. What's the meta looking like? Have there been any shifts? Are there going to be shifts in the future? And we can kind of gauge where we're at. Historically, we've done some of these videos and y'all seem to enjoy the discussion. So I figured, why not? And there's a lot of data here. We've got weapon data, we've got exotic usage rates, we've got subclass usage rates, all that stuff. So it'll be fun to dive in. So currently, as I'm recording this, we are wrapping up. We're in the final hours of Trials of Osiris on Endless Veil. The reward is the Astral Horizon Adept Shotgun. In the kinetic slot, aggressive shotty, very good shotty. Overall, I think it's really good. Maybe not quite as good as the Imperial Decree, but it's very good, especially if you get a God roll and then you can get the Adept. It can take adept mods, all that stuff. So it's definitely worth getting. But let's start right here with weapon usage rates. And so, as always, we try to consider these things in context of the weekend that we're looking at. But a lot of this stuff is pretty similar from week to week. Obviously, right now you've got the Immortal up here in number 1 and number 2 slots. 5.8 million kills, 3.1 million kills. And, collectively you're looking at close to 9 million. Oh yeah, about 9 million kills, and that's going to continue to go up in the next couple of hours as we wind down, because it's mostly at this point people farming for their God roll shotties. So it's probably mostly going to be top of the meta heavy for the final hours. You look at SMG usage overall. 23% of the kills, so almost a quarter of the kills in Trials this weekend were with SMGs. Just not overly surprising. Obviously, that's the thing, like, it's not all SMGs, right? It's not, it used to be your rapid fire SMGs were on top. You think about the multi-mock SMG had its moment in the sun. The submission SMG, actually, I think is still really freaking good, but that's not what people are using. What people are using are the aggressive frame outliers. And again, it's not even all aggressive frames, because some of them are very well balanced, if not undertuned. But it's just the outliers sticking out, aka the Immortal and the Ikelos SMG. Now, the Ikelos is actually getting hit. It's taking a small nerf in the mid-season update, so we don't have to wait till Season 21 for that one to get addressed. But that's only going to make the Immortal even more solidified at the top of the meta. So right now, that is the meta, is to run an aggressive SMG as your primary dueling weapon. There are some pulse rifles. You think you got the No Time to Explain is right there, but it's just, again, it's 1% of the kills is with No Time to Explain, while the Immortal is responsible for a little bit over 17%. So there's a pretty big difference there between the top SMG and the top pulse rifle. Again, part of that is definitely the fact that it's Endless Veil. Obviously, I think if we were to be on Bannerfall, or if we were on Altar of Flame, you're probably going to see that pulse rifle usage bump up a little bit, but I still think Immortal would be the king of the crop up on top. As far as weapons to combine with the Immortal, you're seeing Cloud Strike. It's kind of cool seeing Cloud Strike up there, I'm not going to lie. I think Cloud Strike has a lot of character. It's a very cool exotic sniper rifle, so to see that above the Beloved and other really solid legendary sniper rifles, that's actually kind of cool. Again, I think part of that is considering it in context. This is Endless Veil, and the Cloud Strike is really good for getting multiple picks with one shot at that very opening lane of the map. You spawn in, everybody runs to that center lane. Usually there's 3 lanes you can take, but most people gravitate towards that middle lane or the B lane, where you basically just run over there and watch and wait for somebody to jump up onto the B platform. But anyways, most people go to that center lane. Cloud Strike's really great for getting 2, maybe even 3 kills with one pull of the trigger if you're lucky. So we saw a lot of Cloud Strike in my games this weekend farming for our shotties. It was a very popular choice. And then behind that, you have the Matador, obviously one of the best aggressive shotguns in the game right now. I think that as more people get your Imperial Decrees, their God roll Astral Horizons, you'll see a few more of those. But the reason I think Matador's way up there on top is because it's Arc, which means you can run it with your Immortal. Now, almost all of your primary duels on Endless Veil are going to be in Immortal, not necessarily SMG range, but they'll be in Immortal range. So that's why people feel safe running SMG Shoddy especially on this map. But even on the bigger maps, people are running that combo because they know they can close the gap. They know they can get close. They've got barricades. Your Strand Hunters can zoom in, especially, and have a little bit of DR by getting their Woven Mail up in the process. Then you see the Ikelos SMG, like we said, that one's going to probably continue to go down in usage. It was an outlier. It had some unintended benefits that were built into its DNA. Those are getting tuned and brought down to be in line with the rest of the aggressive SMGs, so it's going to get a little bit of a nerf. Then we have Beloved. Rose is the only hand cannon in that top 10 list right there. And I always feel like hand cannons are sort of, it's misleading because you, like I said, you only see the Rose up there at 2% usage rate, and you might be thinking, yo, I guess hand cannons are not that good right now. I guess no one's using hand cannons because there's only one on that list. Well, I mean, I don't really consider Crimson to be a hand cannon. It looks like a hand cannon, but it doesn't behave like a hand cannon. It's a pulse rifle. It's a CQC pulse rifle. But anyways, Rose, the only one on that list otherwise. But the reality is that hand cannons are in third place. They're the second most used primary weapon type in Trials of Osiris. And you might think, well, they got to be pretty close to pulse rifles. Actually, no, there's a 50% more usage rate on hand cannons than there are pulse rifles. Again, it's Endless Veil, but one of the things I think it's important to remember is that hand cannons, there's so many good hand cannons. Like, there are a ton of good hand cannons. You got Ace of Spades, you got the Eyes Luna, you got the Rose, you've got the Palindrome, you've got the Austringer that can be fully crafted. I mean, there are so many good hand cannons out there. Exalted Truth, Igneous Hammer. A lot of people are running around with the Round Robin. Like, you just have so many choices with hand cannons, and that's why you don't tend to see a lot of them in that top 10 list, but the usage rate is still fairly high. 9% usage rate. Not usage rate, 9% of the kills in Trials are hand cannons. Third place for overall weapon usage. I always think it's funny and just fun to remind people. Lemon Arc is up there. Lemon Arc is one of those things that, yeah, it's got a 1% usage rate, or it's responsible for 1% of the kills. But one of the things I think is important to remember is that that weapon is more about priming. And I think it's more of a problem than the usage rate lets on. I think Lemon Arc is, man, I don't want to like ruffle any feathers here because I know some people really love their Lemon Arcs. I don't dig that weapon for PvP. I think it's problematic, and I think that it flies under the radar just because it doesn't end up being responsible for a lot of kills directly. It's kind of sneaky like that. But they tag you once with that bow, and then you got to run and sit in the corner on your hands for, 10 seconds before you're allowed to be back in the fight again, unless you've got healing accessible to you. And I just think it slows things down. I don't like it. I could talk about how much I dislike Lemon Arc and playing against it all day. But there you go. There's your weapon meta for Trials on a smaller map. You got the SMGs up here, responsible for 23% of the kills, followed by shotguns at 13, followed by hand cannons at 9, sniper rifles at 9, so hand cannon and sniper usage about even. Fusion rifles, 6%. Fusion rifles, actually kind of scary to play against on Endless Veil. Personally, I think you really got to be on top of your game to play around them, but a lot of people they'll even prime with a fusion and then swap to the Immortal to clean you up. Pulse rifles down at 6% as well. Then you've got ARs. ARs actually more used, responsible for more kills than sidearms, down at 2%. It's really funny how quickly sidearms rise to fame and then fall from grace happened. Like, we've had metas where hand cannons are on top for, years. We've had metas where the SMG's on top for multiple seasons. We've had metas where the shotguns are the kings, but that sidearm meta that came with Season of the Haunted, man, that was so fast. It was like, boom, they're at the top, and then boom, they're dead. They're in the grave dead. And it didn't take a lot to do that. But I do think it is worth reminding people that even though there's a 23% on the SMGs there, responsible for 23% of the kills, and sidearms are down at 2%, you might look at that and say the gap is huge between the sidearms and the SMGs. You look at that gap and you're like, wow, they're not even in the same league. But I want to remind people, the outliers in the SMG category are responsible for that. Okay? It's not that sidearms are so much way worse than SMGs. I mean, it'd be really easy to throw that stat at somebody and be like, you're crazy if you think sidearms are OP or if they're good. Look at this. You got 12.7 million SMG kills compared to 1.3 million sidearm kills. That's an easy stat to throw out there, but again, looking at the context, I think that there are some sidearms that are still very, very strong. The catch is that the Immortal is up there responsible for 17% of those SMG kills. You add the Ikelos SMG in there, and you're looking at almost 20% of that 23% is two guns. So it's really just the outliers that set them apart. Overall, I think that sidearms and SMGs are pretty on par with one another if you exclude that 20% that's allocated just towards the outliers. Now we got some more fun subclasses. Everybody try and keep an open mind here. As we go over these stats, I'm calling attention to what is, but I'm not trying to take a pass at anybody's subclass or take any cheap shots at anybody's subclass. We're just going to unpack what we see and maybe infer some information about what that means. But overall, Hunter usage is at the top with 38%, Titan usage is in second place with 32%, and Warlock usage is in third place, last place at 30%. That's not a huge gap. From top to bottom, that's only 8% difference. So overall, the distribution there is really not too bad. I don't think you can look at that and be like, oh, woe is me, my poor Warlock is so bad compared to everybody else. It's not that big of a gap. But obviously, as with all things, it's more nuanced than that. So let's break it down individually. The number one most used subclass in trials is the Arc Titan at 20.3% usage rate. Arc Titan, strong first place. The difference between them and the next best thing is a 5% usage rate. So when you're breaking that down by subclass, that's actually quite a big gap. And it's also interesting to note that on weekends where it is zone cap, the Void Titan is also right up there at the top. So Void Titan and Arc Titan on zone cap are both, if they're not first place and second place in the top three, then they're 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. They're always in the top three. Every time we have had zone cap trials, for the last, it's been at least 2 full seasons, if not 3. But every time it's been zone cap, Void and Arc are cream of the crop, tip of the top. But this weekend was not zone cap, so Void Titan usage goes down. But so Arc Titan in number 1. Why is that? Arc Titan, especially on these smaller maps, has a lot of usage. You got the Jug Shield, you got the Antea Swords. It says it's tight quarters. Dune Marchers are tagging more people. You just have a lot of great options for closing gaps and doing big damage to big groups of people. The Arc Titan obviously going to be really, really highly used, especially you think about Knockout as an ability. It's active for 7 whole seconds where you can just teleport around the map with your melees. Plus, you got Shoulder Charge to help you get across that open lane. How many times did you run and post up in the middle of the lane with your sniper rifle ready to get a pick, and then you just hear that shoulder charge, and he just bolts straight through the gap and into the cubby. Now they've got mid-map control, and so that frees the rest of his team to push up behind him. So Arc Titan, obviously extremely useful. Then, interestingly enough, second place, you've got the Solar Warlock. Obviously, Icarus Dash, very good for getting around the map. Healing grenades, or firebolt grenades. Actually, what we saw more of with the Solar Warlocks was actually the firebolts, because a lot of combat on Endless Vale is just sitting right around the corner. You got a guy right around the corner in that cubby with a shotgun or a fusion out ready to kill you. So you throw that firebolt in first, bam, it tags him, and now you also get wall hacks because the damage ticks are letting you know where he's going to take cover or if he stayed put. So it's an easy slide around the corner and pop with a shotty to clean him up. So those firebolts getting very, very popular among the Solar Warlocks, and it's really helping them deal with those people that are right around the corner. And then in third place, we actually have the Solar Hunter. It's really interesting. As when I play Hunter, Solar Hunter is my main. I've recently been playing on a really cool Revenant build. So the Stasis Hunter build that I've loved, just fallen in love with. And I've got a whole video that I'm going to break that entire build down in depth for you. So I've been gravitating towards that lately. But usually, I'm a Solar Hunter main. And I've been maining Young Ahamkara Spines on my Hunter for, 2 years? It's been a long time. It's been a long, long time. People are finally catching on. Like, they are so freaking good. So that 15.5% usage rate is mostly Young Ahamkara Spine Solar Hunters. And a map like Endless Vale, you've got the cubbies, you got all these flat surfaces and walls, people running right around the corner to get health back, and those trip mines are nasty, absolutely disgusting for flushing people out or finishing people off. So, on a map that's as tight quarters as Endless Vale, I'm not surprised to see 15.5% usage rate on those Solar Hunters. So, first place, Arc Titan. Second place, Solar Warlock. Third place, Solar Hunter. Fourth place also goes to the Hunter. So they have third and fourth place. So that's sort of the consolation prize there. They're like, oh, well, there's Titans and Warlocks both take first and second place before you ever get to a Hunter. Well, then the other Hunter classes are actually really closely knit. So Hunter has third place, fourth place, and sixth place. Kind of interesting. But anyways, so they've got more options that are viable than the other subclasses, while the other subclasses have the cream of the crop. So that's the trade-off there, it seems, on paper at least. So the Void Hunter there in fourth place at 10.6% usage rate. I just think the Void Hunters are always going to be at least a little, they might not be the cream of the crop again after all the nerfs that have, because they were, obviously, if you remember the trauma that we had to endure with the very long and atrocious Void Hunter meta with your Falcons. Everyone was invisible. Everyone was using void volatile weapons. It was awful. I hated it. But that's been addressed. But they're still really useful. Like, Invis is still really useful. Radar pings with smoke grenades, still very useful. Getting your super up quickly, being able to be at least a little bit aggressive with it, or zone off certain parts of the map with it, very useful. So, Void Hunter is always going to be up there somewhere. In fifth place, we've got the Void Titan. Obviously, Void Titan's still very, very useful. Putting down a barricade, getting an overshield, giving an overshield to your teammates, getting a bubble up quickly, being able to shoulder charge as well, just like the Arc Titans. There's just so much utility built into the Void Titan kit that skyrockets when you have zone control trials. You will see that probably 2, if not 3-fold. Increase in usage rate. Then in sixth place, we're back to the Hunters with the Strand Hunters, starting to get a little bit more momentum in trials. Way more usage than the other Strand subclasses. But a lot of people starting to really understand the technical aspects of that subclass and being able to execute them well. And I ran into a fair amount of Strand Hunters, and they can be pretty scary to play against when they know how to use the kit well. Everything from here on out is no longer considered meta. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I don't think Strand Hunter is considered meta yet, even though I think that's an underrepresentation of its value in the sandbox. I think that's going to continue to climb, but not yet meta. Everything else is pretty underutilized. You see some Arc Warlocks, that melee ability is so strong, but it's not strong enough to carry the whole kit. Just why it's not used very widely. Dead last place is the Behemoth at 0.4%, which is there is a particular way to play that subclass in trials that's just freaking oppressive as heck, and I hate it. I run into it like every week. Clan Ice, always out there doing that and bagging for days. We matched them twice this weekend. First match we lost. Second match we were winning, and then good old Bungie servers have been just dog water lately. Absolute dog water. I feel like the Crucible is being held together by spit and duct tape at this point. But one of our teammates got booted got error coded out of the match, rejoined, error coded again. We ended up having to play out of 2v3 and lost. But anyways, Behemoth, better than the percentage actually indicates, there is a way to play that subclass that is atrociously oppressive in Trials of Osiris. But the thing is, it takes everybody doing it to make it good. If there's only 2 out of 3 on your team doing it, pretty easy to counter. You have to full send on it. That's why it's not up there on the usage rate. Other than that, second to last is the Shadebinder, Stasis Warlock. I did a little video. I was like, I don't understand why people aren't doing this, because it's actually really freaking good. It is really freaking good. Shadebinder is so underutilized in PvP, and I think that everybody just goes for the ease of use. Like, you do less to get more out of Solar Warlock. I'm saying this as a Warlock main. I love Warlocks. But Solar Warlock is doing less and getting more. So the ease of use is much higher. And then obviously Icarus Dash carries a lot of weight as well. but also the fact that Shadebinder, like, barely ever, almost never gets their super up in Trials of Osiris. Maybe one match out of your whole card, your whole 7 to 8 game card, one match you'll get your super. So on the flip side of that, the Solar Warlocks are getting those wells up, by the end of a lot of their matches. And then the Hunter least used subclass is the Arc Hunter kit. I think Arc Hunter is pretty solid. I think it's pretty solid. But the thing is, you have to be really good at it to make it good. I think the skill ceiling for the Arc Hunter is much higher. So a very well-seasoned, well-rehearsed Arc Hunter is a lot better than that 2.4% lets on. There are some people out there who have mastered that kit, and they are very scary to play against in the upper echelon of gamers out there. But it requires a little bit more effort, a lot more discipline in order to use that kit very well. As opposed to, I push a button and I throw a grenade that lasts for the entire match and does a ton of damage and sets you on fire. And finally, we move on to individual exotic armor pieces. What's getting used? I think this gives us a lot of insight into not only what's strong, but also it tells us what's weak by omission. So you can look at this list and take note of what is not there, and that can tell you a lot. For example, the number one most used exotic armor piece is the Ophidian Aspects. Even though the Warlocks are the least used statistically in Trials of Osiris, there's more Hunters and there's more Titans than there are Warlocks. But the number one most used exotic armor piece is the Ophidian Aspects. Is it because Ophidians are oppressive, OP, overtuned? I mean, you can make a case for that. But I think what that tells us more, look at that other little substat over there. 13.8% usage rate, but then it says 46% of all Warlocks. 46% of all Warlocks are using the Ophidian Aspects. That's nuts. What that tells me is that Warlock exotics suck. It might be a combination of those two things, right? Obviously, the conversation is always more nuanced than raw data lets on. Ophidian Aspects, 46% usage rate among all Warlocks. Is it because it's super good? Yeah, it's super good. There's no doubt about that. But the gap is so big between that and everything else that it almost indicates more that Warlock exotics are trash in PvP. Warlocks have some incredible PvE exotics, don't get me wrong. PvP exotics, that's a different story. So does this mean Ophidian Aspects need a nerf, or does it mean that Warlock exotics need a buff overall, and Bungie needs to up their game for Warlock exotics? I think it can be a little bit of both. Number two most used exotic armor piece is the Stompies. I think people have just been using it for so long. It integrates into their build. They've got their armor mods all fixated. Their stat rolls are all fixated. So it's not that Stompies are by and large the number one best exotic armor piece for Hunters. I would argue that they're actually not. But I think so many people are just used to the just the passive nature of Stompies. They're just always there, always helping, always doing their job, and you don't have to do anything to make them work. They just work. And a lot of people really like that approach to PvP, where they don't have to be constantly thinking about how to leverage their exotic armor piece. They just know that it's just going to be there helping them out in general. Next, you've got the Dune Marchers. Obviously, we know all about the Dune Marchers. They still reach way far, but they also have the other intrinsic benefits to your Titan movement and speed. Then you've got the Young Ahamkara's Spine down at 7.4% usage rate. It's really interesting that the Solar Hunter is the number one most used Hunter subclass in Trials, but it's not. Young Ahamkara's Spine isn't the number one most used Hunter exotic, so it takes a second place to Stompies. So that's kind of interesting to see. But obviously, most of the people who are running the Solar kit are going to be using the Ahamkara's Spine almost exclusively. Then you've got the Peacekeepers. Obviously, it's not surprising to see the Peacekeepers up there. In usage rate, obviously you got a lot of Titans running around with the Immortal SMG and the Icarus SMG, so having the Peacekeepers just to inherently buff your SMG usage makes it even better. Then you got Transversive Steps, Wormhusk Crown. I think personally Wormhusk is a lot better than Stompies in dueling scenarios, but that's just me. Wormhusk, I think it's surprising to see it have a little over half the usage rate of Stompies. But again, I think it's just because people like to have things that are passively helping instead of things they have to actively think about. But Wormhusk's utility is next to none. Like, I just think it is such a useful exotic. Health on command, you know, and changing your direction. So movement ability that gives you health on command. Can you imagine if Icarus Dash healed you? There would be riots in the streets. I've always thought that Wormhusk, I would not be opposed if Wormhusk got the same treatment as the Mask of Bacchus, which says you can keep all that utility of that exotic. You can keep your healing on command, but the trade-off is that you're going to be dealing with a longer cooldown, and I think that's totally fair. Synthoceps, 3.6% usage rate. It's surprising to me the Antaeus wards are down at 2.8. A lot of people talking about how oppressive Antaeus wards are. They're so much better than their usage rate lets on. Again, I think that's because you have to think about it. You have to actively perform the maneuver and then profit from it. So, but I don't know if it's a mental thing. Like, people think it's going to be harder than it actually is. It is not hard to run at somebody and hit the slide button. We do it in almost all of our duels. I mean, a lot of people in the higher end of the skill gap, all they do is run at you and hit the slide button when they're dueling you. They slide out of cover and start popping you with their hand cannon or their pulse rifle to get a couple of pot shots off at you. Then when you break line of sight to go get your shield back, you sprint through the gap now that it's safe, and you slide around the corner at them again. We're doing it all the time. So I think it's just like this mental gymnast. Like, I don't know, people just think it's going to be a harder maneuver to perform than it actually is, but it is not difficult at all. I say this as somebody who mains Antaeus wards on my Titan. They are very fun. They are extremely useful, extremely dangerous, and not as hard as people think it is. So that's the current meta in Trials. Now, again, this is Endless Veil. Okay, smaller map, but a lot of those things ring true and stay the same. Let's do a little bit of comparison here. Let's compare it to last time. Burnout. More SMG dominance on Burnout. It's a smaller map. Endless Veil is a smaller map. So that's kind of surprising. A lot more special weapon usage. That's the takeaway on Endless Veil. But SMG is still decisively on the tippy top. So that's the big takeaway. Endless Veil leans more towards the special weapons. Interesting stuff. That's our finger on the pulse of Trials. What do you guys think? How do you feel about Trials right now? Obviously, we do have to mention things are going to change. We've got, I think, so week 8 and week 11 of Trials for this season will integrate the Trials labs that are going to be testing out the Challenger pool and the practice pool changes. So that's not a permanent thing this season, but for weeks 8 and 11, we'll be trying those things out. Then they'll come with season 21, the following season. And they've got more information about changes in season 21 that they're going to be sharing with us, they said, later this season. So keep an eye out for TWABs that might talk about Trials changes next season. And then in addition to that, we're going to see a change in the meta, probably because aggressive SMGs are getting a little bit of a nerf, and a rangefinder and zoom values are getting hit as well. So those are the things that carry the Immortal, is the inherent strength of the aggressive frame SMG type in conjunction with the added zoom value from rangefinder, and target lock. So being able to dial that stuff back is good. We're going to see the Immortal not be so much of a dominant outlier like it is right now. What do you guys think? You having fun in Trials? Are you looking forward to the changes with the Challenger pool and practice pool? How do you think that's going to affect you? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again, as always, for watching the video. I appreciate y'all. Feel free to subscribe for additional Destiny content. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible. Bye-bye.